Thank you so much for signing up for our watercolor class. I'm excited to share with you some tips and techniques that I've learned along the way on how to watercolor. I'm going to share with you my version of no line watercolor using just the ink pad that is the color that you'd like to watercolor. So in this case, we are using crushed curry to get this yellow effect. So you'll get all the supplies needed to make this card. You'll get the raw components, which are these here. You're also going to be receiving the Climbing Roses stamp set, an aqua painter, as well as a palette tray for watercoloring. You'll need to supply, if you don't have it already, your ink refills for soft sea foam and crushed curry, ink pad for gray granite, and ink pad for crushed curry, and your clear blocks here. Now, inside your kit of paper supplies, I'd like to show you what you will be receiving to make my card. Now, Jenny's going to have a different card for you, but to make my card, you will have one piece of soft sea foam for your card base, a pre-cut trellis that comes from the Rose Trellis Thinlit dies. The dies are not included in this kit, and you can buy those if you want. They coordinate with that stamp set. You're also going to get a piece of shimmery white. That's what it is, shimmery white cardstock, a die cut label piece, and another piece of shimmery white for testing, 3 sequins, and some of this fun, what is this called? This fun ribbon, it's the flax ribbon, about 5 inches of that. All right, let's get started here. If you're not familiar with an aqua painter, it's a water brush. Essentially, inside of the tube here, you can fill with water, and it has a tip. Depending upon how much you squeeze will depend upon how much water you get. I suggest you play around with the flow of the water before you get started. Just use a piece of scrap paper or a paper towel, just so that you get an understanding of how this will flow. Now, you can use just a little bit of crushed curry. You don't need a lot, and a little bit of soft sea foam, just to practice. All right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick up just a tiny bit of that, and you'll see how it's super dark all the way to light. See that there? The more water you add, the more the ink is diluted. Similar, let's wipe it all out. We're going to just get rid of the ink and wipe it out. We'll try some of this sea foam. This is just scratch paper here. See how that ink reacts a little bit differently. It dilutes a little bit quicker. Now for this card, I've stamped and I've pulled ink from the stamp. I'm going to show you how I do that. I've stamped this large image twice, once here, and then this smaller floral right here on a piece of scrap paper. Just mount the small rose stamp on this small block here, and we're going to take this piece from our supplies, this small strip. It's about 4 inches by an inch. This is for practice, just to see how the water brush works with the ink. We're going to stamp it in crushed curry. So we're going to open a pad, and we're going to ink that up. And we're just going to stamp across in the crushed curry. We're going to hand cut these out afterwards, even though there is a die that coordinates. But you didn't get the die in your kit. So, okay, so we're just going to stamp them along there like so. We'll close this so it doesn't dry. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the ink solely from what has been stamped down here. So we're not going to be adding any from here, just from here. Now, you're going to be checking. You want your brush somewhat wet, but not too wet. And that's why you've stamped 5 of these, because you're going to pick your best one once you've watercolored it to trim out for your card. Now, what I like to do when I'm watercoloring an image like this is really tiny, so you need to be a little bit more precise than you would be with a larger image. But it's good that we're starting with this one, because the larger image then will be a little bit easier for you. So we're going to take these areas here. See what's happening as I wet this? We're going to take these lined images, and we're just going to kind of pull that ink inward. Okay? And I like to take and do maybe every other petal, letting one petal dry and creating a little bit more definition in between each petal, alternating, if you will, so that some petals are left white and some petals are left fully colored. And the more you work it, the more those lines disappear. See what's happening here? Now I'm going to come back into a couple of those that I left open and just fill them in subtly. See what's happened there? Let's practice that again. Start to work more and more of them. I want to show you what happens if you don't skip the petals. So if we're just going to take it and just paint this all the way across, you don't skip the petals, you start to lose the definition of what's happening in your flower. See, you get a nice definition outline all the way around, but your inside lines start to disappear. And the more you work it, the more they will disappear. See? So by taking and doing every other petal, or just a petal at a time and coloring inside, you will create or keep, if you will, more definition on that rose. Yeah, that's looking good. Okay, so I still have just a tiny bit. You don't need much. Look at how tiny that is. You're going to come back in, and in fact, I want to dilute that a little bit, because you'll see when you're trying this that some of those, when it's full strength, sometimes the ink is too much contrast, but I like what I've done there. I'm going to just add a little bit of darkness next to those original shadow lines, just to create a little tiny bit of definition. All right, now I've chosen 2 colors here. I've chosen crushed curry and soft seafoam. The reason I stamped this in crushed curry versus like a gray granite or something like that is because I wanted to be able to pull the ink from the crushed curry into the flower and not have any gray whatsoever. What you need to be careful of when you do this, though, is you need to make sure that the colors coordinate. Greens and yellows are very close on the color spectrum, and so they will look and blend well together. They won't turn too muddy. But for example, if you were to choose like purple and orange, obviously you're going to get a really muddy, yucky blend. So what we're going to do here on these leaves is we're going to ink up our aqua painter just with a little bit, and you can start soft, and you're just going to come inside of that petal, and we're not going to blend too much. We're just going to fill color. So you have a few different options there, and you can choose your favorite. When I look at all of these across, I think I like these first 2 best, but doesn't matter, right? Okay, so we've practiced. We're going to set that aside to dry, and now we're going to make the background of our card. Essentially what we're doing is no line watercoloring on this larger image. This larger image is essentially 2, 1 and 2, kind of mirror stamped. So we're going to take this piece, it's roughly 4 1/4 by 5 piece of shimmery white cardstock. We need to mount our larger floral image right here. You'll notice I didn't stick the cling on here because it's such a large surface that I don't know that I need it so much, and I can line it up. Let's see, how do I want to put that on there? Like so. Bigger stamps like this, I like to ink up in this direction because I can see that I've got full amount of ink coverage. And I tend to keep my block a little cleaner that way. So that's nice and inked up. And we're gonna stamp 1. See, like so. You don't have to worry about doing this fast. It's okay if this ink dries. You can come back in and do this, the watercolor step, tomorrow or the next day. The best thing about classic ink is it's water-based. And so if it's stamped on a nice piece of shimmery white or watercolor, that ink will reactivate when you add water. It's pretty cool. Okay, so we're just gonna stamp that like so. Now, you're gonna notice that that's open, but that's totally fine because our card design hides that. We're gonna put the label over the top. We're gonna put ribbon over the top of that portion there, okay? So now you get to play. Now you get to take your time and watercolor these fun floral images. Now what I suggest, again, oh, we don't need to do this. Let's clear this off. I suggest starting first by just pulling in the ink from what you've stamped. And just check the flow, make sure you're getting enough water. And again, we're gonna alternate petals. Now this can take as little or as much time as you'd like. I'm gonna come around, let's see, and skip some petals. And you can see how this can be a labor of love. This could take you a really long time, or you could do it pretty quickly. And the more you do it, the better you will get, the more confident you'll feel about doing this. Coming in. I like to leave a few petals in light or on just the paper stock so that we don't have so much yellow, so that there is a little bit of definition. We'll come back into this and add the darker areas at the end. You'll want to skip the leaves, okay? And look how that ink is just activating. This is totally dry, but the ink will just activate once you add water to it, which is kind of fun. You can try it with all sorts of colors. In fact, once we're done here, I will show you a few color tests that I did, doing the same thing. You often see no line watercoloring where someone will stamp in gray or a super light tan, and they'll stamp off so that you barely see the line, and then they will come in and, you know, laboriously color every single petal with perfect shading. And I love that, but it's also, that also takes a lot of time. And sometimes you just want to create a pretty watercolor card that doesn't take a ton of time. And I like this look for doing that. Ooh, that one's pretty. I think that's coming along nice right there. If you want it messier, see how messy that one is? You can add more water and blend those lines even more. But I like this cleaner look. This is great. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, coming back in, now we will add just some of our darker darker areas. This is dry to the touch. This one's not. So look, let me show you what happens. When it's dry to the touch and you come back in, your ink is not going to bleed as much. See this? It's pretty, it stays in one place. But over here, look what happens. See how that bleeds out? So you can decide if you want to re-wet so that you can get some of these areas to bleed a little more. And if they do bleed a little bit more, they will be messier. But if you don't want that, you can let it dry completely and then just come back in and it won't bleed. It'll continue to stay in its petal shape. So there's advantage for both, right? It just depends on the look that you want. And by skipping petals, I'm keeping those areas from bleeding into each other. See over here, it's much softer and bled. This has a little bit more definition. See? But both will look fine once we finish our card. And really, you're just creating a soft background. Now I'm liking what's happening over here. This is more definition than this over here. We could take as much time or as little as we want, but I think that you get the idea, and we'll move on to the leaves next. So the leaves, we're going to be using, again, just this soft sea foam. We're gonna clean out our brush completely. Doesn't matter if we don't, but I'd like to get the leaves to be a little more green than yellow green. Now the water's going to pick up automatically because those are stamped in yellow, but you don't, I would just like to start with a clean brush. Now I want to make sure that this is softer. You can always go back in and add more color. It's harder to take away color. So the softer you start, then you can get a sense of how dark you really want it. Cool. I'm liking the look of that. And do you see what's happening to that yellow on the leaves? See what's happening? It's starting to bleed into where we just colored, but it creates this really cool fractured look. I like it. I almost forgot. I wanted to show you a few alternatives for stamping and watercoloring. So like we mentioned, oh, this has a little goober on it. This one is stamped in crushed curry, and then it has been watercolored with crushed curry and soft sea foam. This pretty blue one has been stamped in Night of Navy, and then the watercolor's pulled in, and I really like the look of this. This one's really quite pretty. And then again, it's soft sea foam for the leaves. And the leaves, the blue and the green, those colors just are analogous. They look really good together. This one is stamped in Berry Burst, and the leaves are colored with Tranquil Tide. And the Tranquil Tide kind of makes, I don't know, the leaves, they just kind of turn a little purple because the blue color that's in that green blends really well with the Berry Burst, and I think that has a really pretty effect and look. This has been stamped on watercolor paper, and you can kind of see that there's a little bit of a different look happening there. And then this particular one, this is kind of a fun technique. This has been stamped first on watercolor paper, just the outline image in Berry Burst. Then it has been spritzed, and you can see this bleeding that has happened just by a single spritz. Then I let that dry, and then I stamped it again one more time on top and went back in and did the no-line watercoloring. So the same color combo as this, but look at what happens there. It just is a little bit softer and more, I don't know, the color's a little more saturated, and you've got this real fun painterly feel with it. So I wanted to share those three different color combos that you can do using the exact same technique here. Let's get ready to finish up this card. You're going to take your soft sea foam card base and fold it. It should be pre-scored for you. And you're going to want to just get that fold nice and creased down for your card base. Your watercolor piece is eventually going to mount right up there with equal size around the top and left and right sides, leaving enough for a border on the bottom, like so. See this border here? In your packet, you're going to have the trellis border. You're going to need to just pop out any leftover negative pieces that may be left from that die cut. And you're going to mount it. You can actually trim it in half so you have more for another card. And you're going to mount it behind like so. Right, we need to pop those out, and then we're just going to trim the edges. So let's do that portion real quick. I'm going to just cut it in half so that I have a piece to use for later. And I'm just going to pop out these leftovers. Really all you need to pop out are the bottom pieces because that's all that's going to show. And then we're going to create this little scallop border. I'm just going to add some adhesive to the back. I'm still using my trusty fast fuse, but you can use snail or any type of adhesive. I like to use a tape runner because it'll pick up wherever there is paper. And you're just going to line it up left to right so that only the scallop is showing, like so. Very good. And then from the front or the back, you can decide. You're just going to trim off that excess, just like so. See? And that will give us this card base here. Then we're going to mount that to our card. Let's see. The other reason I like using a tape runner with pieces like this is your leftover tape that you've used all along will still be sticky through these holes and openings. Okay. Let's just get all those pieces out so we don't glue one down inadvertently. And we're just going to line that up like I mentioned and adhere that down to our card front, just like so. Great. Now you're going to take this die cut piece and you're going to stamp the I Thought of You Today right in the center in gray granite. So let's mount that up right now, the I Thought of You Today, which is this one. And put it on our block. I like to use the labels. The new cling labels are amazing, but I still like to just use the foam. However, on the greetings, I definitely like to use the labels so that I can see through the block exactly where this is going to stamp. You're going to stamp it pretty much center, but it doesn't really matter if it is center exactly because we're going to cheat wherever you stamp it and place a little cut flower and a couple of sequins to balance it out. So we'll ink that up and then we're just going to stamp it like so in the center. Very good. Couldn't be more perfect. And then we're going to take one of our flowers. Choose which one we like the best. Once they're dry, which one do I like the best? Maybe this one here. We're just gonna hand cut that out. I like to use big scissors. Some people think that is crazy for fussy cutting, but I like to cut really close to the inside. I feel like I have a lot of control that way and I can do it relatively quickly. These are super sharp fabric scissors that I've had for forever. I love them for paper. Fabric people will die because I'm using them for paper, but they're so sharp, just like butter, and I can sharpen them. I love them. Then you're just going to take a little Stampin' Dimensional and you're going to pop that up on the card. We'll place that, how about there? That looks good. All right. We will add a couple sequins. In your kit, you will have, if I can pick them up, you'll have just 3 that have been cut for you. I like to use things in 3. There's a general rule that things in three are inherently a little more appealing. That's just a general design rule, but I also like that you can create a triangle, and when you create a triangle, wherever you place your sequins, you're naturally drawing the eye to whatever's inside of that. So if I put one here, and one here, it's all gonna go to the greeting. If I put one here and two here, again, your eye's gonna draw to the greeting. So that's kind of a little bit of triangle theory for you. You probably knew that already. I'm gonna take the ribbon and I'm gonna adhere it behind like so. So basically you should have a 4 or 5 inch strip. You're gonna fold this in half just beforehand so that it creases. If you want to, just to make sure that it stays creased, you can add just a little bit of adhesive in between to hold that down, okay? And then what you're going to do is adhere it on the back over here. So again, I'm going to do this fancy maneuver where I stick it down. Let's make sure that that's kind of in the place. What you're going to want to do is hide this little white gutter that's been created. So that looks pretty good. I like to stick it down first. And then when I go back through with my dimensionals, I like to just double tack, like part of it on the ribbon, part of it on the label. I think that that just helps it stay in place a little bit more and keeps everything the same height when you pop it up. All right, and then we're gonna remove these guys here, just like so. And then we're just gonna place this on the card. Now we're gonna add the sequins very last. So that looks pretty good, like so. And let's just determine where we want this triangle. Now you can use your take your pick tool, or I use, let's see, where's my take my pick? Take your pick tool, or I use a super old school paper piercer. I just like it because it's small and I use it for just about everything. So, ooh, I shot that one clear off. Let's see. I like to just figure out where I'm gonna place it. Let's put one there. These sequins are the regular sequins that are available in the annual catalog, and these are soft sea foam, so it's nice that they match pretty well. Let's put one here. And let's put the last one there. That creates a nice little triangle there. There you go. I thought of you today. Really fun card. Now you could do inside greetings, right? You have the stamp set now. I haven't done an inside greeting, but hope you're doing well. Would look really nice stamped inside of there with the flower, or I'm so proud of you. There's a lot of different things that you could put on the inside. And then I wanted to also share just a few fun cards, additional cards that I've made with this set. So this is stamped in black ink and then just colored. This is a quick watercolor where you're just taking your aqua painter and basically just circle, 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 just coloring over where the flowers are and then going quickly in with your brush, just quickly to fill in those leaves. So basically what you would do is you would pick up your ink one time and you would take your largest image, which you want to be your darkest image, paint that in, and then just travel from there, and your ink will gradually get like lighter. Quick, 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 quick. So a lot of the same techniques, the ribbon on here, hand cutting the flowers. There's no sequins, but we used a little washi tape just to create that border similar to the border on this one. So that's a fun card. This is the same card, but with black, and then just kind of quickly going in and watercoloring those flowers. Fun look, a little bit different, not as soft as this, but still quite a pretty look. And then this card, you may have seen this, I posted this on my Instagram. Very similar, but this is the this is using this this berry burst piece. Like so, there's a die in the die cuts that will trim that all out. And so I've just placed that on this card here. Creates a nice little frame. So those are 3 additional ideas for you using this fun Climbing Roses set. Well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this class and you learned a few things on how to create watercolor or a semi-faux watercolor with the Climbing Roses. Again, I'm Charlet Mallett and appreciate you taking the time with me today.